Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. In today's video, we are going to be continuing My Hero Academia, The Dark Knight Returns. What if Deku was Batman? Part 5. As always, if you're new to the channel or if you're a regular and you enjoy what we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting stats to come out now and in the future. Where we last left off with our series, we covered the event of the USJ attack, as Izuku and friends had to hold off the now present League of Villains, as well as Izuku's first official run-in with Shigaraki. Now, as we enter into the first half of the UA Sports Festival, we'll get to see how Izuku will fare being quirkless and now going up against his rather powered comrades. In the same time, we'll get a little more of a glimpse into Bruce's past as we learn more about the incident of 10 years ago, the incident that retired the Batman. As many new forces now lurk in the shadows, looming over our heroes. How will they fare as they grow to become stronger in their quest to become heroes? And for Izuku, how will he deal with the pressures as more and more of living up to the mantle of the Bat looms over? For all this and more, stay tuned as we now continue My Hero Academia, The Dark Knight Returns. What if Deku was Batman Part 5? As always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. For the students of Class 1A, they were excited about the upcoming sports festival, although there were some growing concerns naturally. Following the attack at the USJ, there were some students that felt as though the sports festival might need to be cancelled, at least for general safety, not knowing who these villains were or where they had come about. Of course, that sentiment wasn't lost on anyone. However, Mr. Aizawa explained the reason for keeping the festival going. At times like this, the Hero Society had to show that they were strong and undisturbed by the attack. If they were to start canceling things, if they were to start becoming more and more paranoid about what could or couldn't happen, then it would only give the villains free range to try to roam and do more. Being the part of a hero wasn't all about just the fighting itself, it was also about the mental game, something that Izuku was starting to become more and more familiar with. He was starting to see that the teachings he had learned from Bruce, they didn't just apply to him, but it was something that all of Hero Society had taken to heart. Of course, Izuku heard many stories from Bruce about his days fighting crime as the Caped Crusader himself, and he had come to see that many of the philosophies that were used by the famed Batman were adopted by the Hero Society as a whole. It was the reason why All Might chose to be the symbol of peace. He was the ultimate deterrent, and you could say that the Batman was a deterrent but for different reasons. All Might was the hero by day, but at night, the night specifically belonged to Batman, and for one crucial reason. It was to allow the villains to feel as though they were being closed in by both sides. Even if you evaded All Might, there was still the high possibility that you would run into the Batman. Someone who had become more of myth than anything else. The man that may or may not have a quirk. The man that always seemed to vanish in the shadows. The thing that was always going bump in the night. If All Might was the hope, then Bruce, he was the fear. They worked in tandem, like yin and yang. They both balanced one another and evened each other out to a degree. As Izuku pondered this, he started to try to wonder if that was the role he would be playing in the world. If he were to truly take up the mantle of the Bat, was this really what came with it? The idea of being the one in the shadows. In the meantime, everyone was staying focused on the upcoming festival, wanting to train and to prepare for themselves for whatever was going to come their way. Of course, for Bruce, he was looking into other matters. Along with Carrie, the two would be going over what happened at the USJ. Bruce had actually been speaking with his old protege about the matter. "And you're saying that's all you know, Bruce?" a voice would say from over the phone. "I've told you, Dick, plenty times before. I saw what the boy saw. The villains came through some sort of warping gate. I assumed it must be from that villain that I noticed, who seemed to be made of a dark gas. In all likelihood, his entire body is a portal, and he can travel with others through it, as well as himself." "I see. A portal villain. We haven't dealt with one of those in a while. And how are things going for you?" "Well, the new prefecture in Bloodhaven seems to be running pretty well. Crime has been on an uptick a little bit, but it's nothing too much to worry about for now. I'm mainly focusing in on these other reports, and I'm actually starting to see some potential." "Is that so?" "Yeah, there's a young man I came across not too long ago. He has a unique quirk, allows him to glide on various surfaces with ease. He's rather acrobatic." "Reminds you of someone?" "You could say." "So, you're thinking about taking a protege of your own?" "Nothing like that. In fact, the kid's been going around doing vigilante work. It's not like how it used to be for the two of us. And at the very least, we eventually had a law passed so that we could work in secrecy. But if this kid keeps going the way he is, I might have to bring him in myself." "Ooh, be careful he doesn't get the best of you." "Come on, I trained from the best. There's no way this kid would take me out. But still, how's the new guy doing?" "He's progressing fine. His training improves day by day. Carrie has been watching over him in the meantime, whenever she isn't doing her own patrols." "I see. You know, I don't think I have to tell you, but I know. I'm not allowing him to do anything dangerous. I'm just giving him the tools that he'll need to succeed. I always make sure to keep him monitored. I make sure that the suit and the gadgets are all kept in a secure place. He doesn't have anything he doesn't need to be holding." "Good. It's not that I don't trust you, it's just... I know. I have it under control." Have you visited him?" "I haven't, but the anniversary is coming. You know, me and Barbara, we were gonna... It's fine. I'd rather be alone, if you don't mind." "Sure. But you shouldn't blame yourself, Bruce. What happened 10 years ago, it wasn't your fault." I tell myself that every day. And yet my family was nearly torn apart, all because of my foolishness. Because I failed to see the truth. And this, you could say it's my penance. The phone call would end there, as Bruce thought to himself. He remembered the incident from 10 years ago. The night that everything changed. And you could say it was the night that the bat was finally put to rest. But that's a story for another day. A story of love, a story of loss, and ultimately surviving betrayal. In the meantime, Izuku had to prepare for the upcoming sports festival. He wasn't sure of what he was going to do. Mr. Aizawa had given Izuku a permission slip. As long as he had the equipment he was going to use written down and submitted and turned in and approved, he'd be allowed to use any gadgets that were necessary. After all, since he was classified as quirkless, and he was going to be competing with the other students, he was going to have to use that big brain of his along with whatever he had at his disposal to try to get him by. Of course, Bruce wasn't just going to let Izuku get a hold of everything. After all, this was just a sports festival. It wasn't like Izuku needed some encryption breaking device, or say the Batmobile or something like that. In fact, Izuku wasn't even allowed to use the Batsuit. No, he was going to get the standard exo suit that would go underneath his tracksuit. That increased the user's strength by 5, instead of the Batsuit that increased his strength by 10. So basically, in a way of explaining, with Izuku wearing the Under Armour bodysuit, his strength would increase to the point where he would be able to lift at a max 500 to 600 pounds, whereas in the Batsuit, he could lift around 1,500, maybe even 2,000 pounds if he really wanted to push the limits. But of course, the suit was always being updated, so as Izuku got older and got stronger, so too would many of the other suits and capabilities. But for now, this was where he was at. Also, Izuku was given Bruce's old utility belt. He would only be allowed to use a certain number of gadgets that he could bring with him. Also, Bruce made it very clear that Izuku was only going to be allowed to use the gadgets that he started with. So, if he ran out of anything, then he was out of luck. You could say that this was another part of his training, to be prepared for the unexpected. He was going to run into situations where he wouldn't have all of his tools with him at all times, or he would only have a certain number of tools. After all, you didn't see the Batman going around hauling everything with him at all times, even if it seemed that way. No, Bruce always had to be prepared for a contingency, the worst case scenario. Or, as many people online were calling it, prep time. Izuku had always wondered about that. He even asked Bruce if prep time was a real thing, and Bruce said that it really wasn't. It just seemed that way. Izuku, what you have to understand is that for people like us, we don't have the luxury of falling behind on some great power. We're not All Might, we're not Endeavor, we're none of those people. Our power is in our mind and what we can prepare for. More often than not, when going into a fight, people tend to overcomplicate things. They try to psych themselves out, and in the process, they end up missing the whole point. Why do you think we've been going over quirk psychology the way that we have? So that I understand how to counter against different foes? That's only half of it, kid. The reason for quirk psychology is because more often than not, your average quirk is absolutely worthless. Sure, there are the more flashier types, but there are also quirks that can seem on the surface to do absolutely nothing. Take that kid in your class with the purple balls on his head, Mineta. Sure, in his hands, his quirk might be absolutely worthless, but I could think of over 50 different ways to use that quirk to cause damage to an entire city, maybe even a country if I were feeling like it. Come on, you're joking, right? I mean, Mineta's quirk, sure it can be tricky, but you don't mean you could really do that much damage with it, do you? Bruce simply looked at Izuku and grinned, and that gave Izuku a lot of cause for concern. If Bruce really could do that much damage with a quirk like that, then it really was the matter of how you use them. That's the whole point of your training. More often than not, you're going to run into situations where you feel like the odds are stacked against you, where you feel as though you need something big and grand to get the job done. But more often than not, you'll always have everything you need. You just have to be prepared. Always remember to keep your calm, and above all else, remember to stay in control. The moment you start to lose that control is the moment that you've lost the fight. Izuku took these words to heart as he got himself set for the sports festival. When choosing the gadgets that he would need, Izuku realized that the utility belt could only fit but so much, so he couldn't pack everything he needed with him. So he decided to only take the essentials. First, he was going to take the Cache Nano Ball. For those of you who are unaware, this is a special weapon that I have created for Izuku. It's a sphere, if you will, made entirely out of highly compactable, almost as tough as steel, nanites. On mental command, Izuku, with this ball, the ball can transform into any weapon, from a sword, to a bow staff, to a katana, to nunchucks, to a shield, things of that nature. However, the one thing that it cannot transform into is firearms or any form of shooting weapon. As you know, Bruce is not a proponent of using guns or anything of that means. So Izuku can only create melee weapons, from something as elaborate as a sword, to something as simple as a baseball bat, or a crowbar. Although we don't talk about the crowbar. If you can think it, and you can hold it in your hands, then Izuku could make it. There was also batarangs, but there was only but so much room for them. At most, he could carry about 30, 15 on each side. He also carried 6 flash grenades and 6 smoke grenades. He would also carry the bat claw, or the grapple gun, if you will. And he would have 6 glue bombs or sticky bombs at his disposal as well. And for now, that was going to make up his arsenal. Eventually, 2 weeks would pass, and the day of the sports festival would finally arrive. Security had been upped around the arena, as the festival was going to be broadcast live, and many in Japan were watching on in anticipation for what was to come. Up in a special booth that was made private would be none other than Bruce Wayne. He would be sitting with his assistant Carrie, who would be standing over and assisting, when the door finally opened and a rather skinny figure would make his way inside. Ah, Toshinori. So nice to see that you were able to make it. Bruce, it's nice to see you. I see, all expenses paid as always. Of course. After all, these are the fruits of my labor. Why don't you enjoy the food and the drink, and we can watch the festival here together? Will do, thank you. So, how's the boy looking? You think he's gonna do well in this tournament? Who's to say? There are a whole lot of powerful students this time around, and I must say they are rather promising, especially that girl of yours. So, it wasn't hard to figure out. After all, that freaky monster strength, it can only come from one place. So, if you finally chose a successor, why is she just entering into school now? I thought about what you said, and after thinking it over, I figured she might be the best option. Of course, she's 2 years older than the other students, so in terms of education, she had already received hers, but the hero course was open and willing to take her. So she comes to UA, but only for the hero course. Whenever she's not there, she and I are either training, or she's off to her own devices while she lives here. Ah, I see. So, she's still in her rookie phase, huh? And just how much of the power has she mastered already? I would say she's at a decent 10 to 12%. In 2 years' time, that's as far as she's gotten. Training up her body hasn't been as easy as you'd think. To be able to hold that much power, it's taken a lot. But she's come a lot farther than I would have expected. And she held her own well during the USJ attack. And so did your boy as well. It seems he's learning a lot from you. And it's true. The boy definitely has his moments. His brain thinks faster than anything else. I would say of everyone I've taken under my wing, he's definitely a hodgepodge, if you will, of all of them. You think so? Yes, most definitely. He has the fluidity of Dick. He has the intellectual mindset of Tim. And when it comes down to it, he can throw hands like the best of them, like Jason. And then there's Carrie. His deduction skills are a compliment, just like hers are. Carrie would blush a little bit at the compliment, as her glasses fogged a little as she wiped them away. And then he also reminds me of, you don't have to say it. That's the thing. You never know where something like this could go. Izuku has a good head on his shoulders. I don't think you'd have to worry about something like that happening. Of course, but it's still just a dream. Anyway, it looks like they're about to start. The sports festival would get underway, as the students of Class 1A, 1B, and so on were all gathered together. Like in the original, Bakugo would give the opening speech. It wouldn't be anything too dramatic, just simply him pissing off everyone around him. Of course, though, Izuku had many eyes on him. Word was going around about a boy that was quirkless, and that he was doing some amazing things. Even before the festival started, Izuku had found himself being confronted by none other than Shoto Todoroki. Todoroki would declare open war against Izuku. He acknowledged that Izuku was definitely skilled for someone without a quirk, but that in the end he was going to show why that those without had no business aspiring for the top. He made it very clear that he was going to be number one, and he was so confident he would only need to use the left side of his power, referring to his white hair as he held out his hand, showing it with beams of ice. However, Izuku would not be dissuaded. So, you're that confident that you're only going to beat me with half of your power? If you truly feel that way, Todoroki, then you might as well go home. What was that? I've told you before. If that's really what you think, then you can go home. You think that your power and only using half of it will be enough? No. It's going to take more than that to beat me. And if you can't see that, then you're destined to fail. Of course, Bakugo didn't like being ignored, and he made it clear that if anyone was going to come out on top in all of this, it would be him. Everyone had their goals set of who they wanted to beat and who they wanted to defeat to advance. The first event would be the obstacle race. Midnight would announce the rules of the race, as they would be going about on a track all around the stadium. As everyone went to the entranceway, Izuku would notice how everyone was crowding near the front. He was able to look around and he's noticed just where this was going. As such, Izuku would fall back. As everyone was watching in anticipation as the race was about to start, Bruce simply smiled to himself. All Might would look over to him and ask why he was smiling, and Bruce looked back and said, "Because the boy is using his head. That's why." Just watch. President Might would yell for start, and immediately the students would all cower through the entrance exam blocking the way, and no one would be able to get past. However, Todoroki would come blazing through on ice, while Bakugo went flying with his explosions. And following behind them was a boy flying through the air. Izuku had waited all the way in the back, as he used his grappling hook to aim for the ceiling of the entranceway, propelling himself forward to fly over the crowd and avoid getting caught in the doorway's hold. As a result, he was able to swing forward and jump above everyone else as he ran on ahead. Before long, the other students would eventually make their way out as well, Melissa following not too close behind, as she used her overflow at 5%, crackles of blue electricity forming all around her body, her speed increasing mightily. She was wearing goggles instead of glasses to make sure that no dirt or debris got in her eyes as she ran. And with her mastery of this much of One for All, she was able to keep up a fairly decent pace, making sure that she didn't trip over her feet or anything like that. Eventually though, the students would be confronted by their first test, multiple villain robots that were coming crashing towards them. Izuku knew that he didn't have time to fight them, and instead, he used his skills in acrobatics to evade, jumping from leg to leg of the robot, using the grappling hook to swing and move out of the way when necessary, avoiding any undue fights. While a few of the students were getting stuck behind, Izuku for the most part was keeping his pace, and Melissa was close behind. As she ran up beside him, the two of them would find themselves lightly jogging together. Melissa, while trying to be encouraging, she still had her own pride and she wanted to win. And she would wave to Izuku before increasing her power to 10% and blitzing him. Of course, Izuku expected this. Melissa was going to make her way up to where Bakugo and where Todoroki were, as the three of them started pretty much fighting for first. Of course, Izuku would still stick to the main goal in mind, but there was also someone else that would come from the rear that would also be impressed with him. A girl with pink curly hair, her eyes looking like that of targets, and she was strapped with every type of gadget and gizmo that she had at her disposal. "Hey there, you got some impressive looking babies, but check mine out." "Huh? Who are you?" "The name's Mei Hatsume. So, I haven't seen you around, kid. You a part of the support corps too? You must be with all those gadgets." No, I'm in the hero corps actually." "What? Let me guess, class 1D? "Nope." "1C? "No." "1B, definitely 1B. "No, I'm in 1A. "1A? Really? Wow, so what's your quirk then?" Don't have one." "You're kidding. You made it all the way into class 1A without a quirk?" "Yeah, it's kind of just my thing." "Oh, well, anyway, we should talk shop sometime. But Mama's got a race to win." Izuku nodded in understanding and the two went their separate ways. In the meanwhile, Izuku was eventually able to get past the other three as they were fighting amongst themselves to try to get the first. Melissa avoiding the various attacks of ice, and Bakugo trying to take them both out with an explosion. Of course, what really shocked them all was when Izuku was able to get ahead of them. And even more so, once he finally reached a mine of landfills, he would start digging up the mines and grabbing a board of metal from one of the broken robots. As he had finally dug all of them up, he was preparing a little contraption that he could use to his advantage. Of course, the other three would quickly be on his heels, and he knew that he was going to have to think fast if he was going to get through this. But thankfully, he already knew what he needed to do. Good enough though, the landmines that were being used were non-lethal, and he only hoped that they would forgive him for what was about to come next. As he saw them making their way, all three of them now having their eyes on Izuku looking to surpass him, Izuku stopped where he was going, as all three of them looked like they were about to hit him at once. However, Izuku simply smirked. As he grabbed two of the landmines, he attached them to the bottom of his feet, jumping at an instant and sending himself flying high into the air. All three went flying past him, and they thought that he had just gotten out of the way, although where on earth he were going, they had no idea. But what they didn't know was that Izuku had ran some wire under the ground, and he had a little trap set in place. A little collection of landmines underground, along with a sticky bomb. The moment that it went off, the explosion would carry the sticky goo in every direction, slowing down all three as they were held to a still, as they had to try to fight their way from out of the trap. Izuku in the meanwhile would take the remaining landmines and, attaching them to the board of metal, would use the metal board like a surfboard, riding the wave of the explosion, flying past all of them as he went rocketing towards the arena wall. At the last moment, Izuku would use his grappling hook, grabbing the top, before eventually swinging forward and moving through, coming in at first place. Followed closely behind was Todoroki, who had used his freezing quirk to freeze the goo before breaking it and moving forward to claim second. Bakugo would use his explosions to melt away the goo and before taking third. As for Melissa, she used One for All, spinning around like a spinning top and flinging it all away before eventually going in fourth. To say that she was embarrassed would be an understatement. She had One for All at her disposal, and that was the best that she could do? Was she serious right now? And then there was Bakugo. He gotten tricked by that damn nerd. Of course, him and his little gadgets and gizmos. His little cheap tricks. How could he have fell for something like that? But Todoroki? You could almost think that there was steam coming out of his ear as he was fuming. He thought that he had won. He let himself get pulled into that stupid squabble with Melissa and with Bakugo, and now Izuku had managed to overtake him. Of course, Izuku was happy that he had gotten the win, and it seemed as though now he were in the driver's seat. The crowd were cheering in approval for what they were seeing. This boy, who didn't have a quirk, was able to hold his own. He was smart about what he was doing, and he had managed to come in first. Izuku wasn't too sure of it himself, but what he was doing was almost inspiring to a degree. To see someone without a quirk actually be able to accomplish a feat like this, maybe there was no telling what anyone could do. And ultimately, this was the type of mentality that Izuku would want to have. He didn't let not having a quirk be a detriment. It didn't mean that you didn't do the right thing, or that you couldn't try for your goals, quirk or without a quirk. His master had been the living proof of this, and he felt as though he were one step closer to being where he wanted to be. As all of the other students would eventually file in, there would be a short reprieve before the announcement for the second battle of the sports festival. In the meantime, as everyone was watching, all around the world and in the stadium, there was one in particular who was keeping a close eye on his screen. A man in a rather familiar mask. A mask that was colored in two. On the left side of his face, it was all black. And on the right, a bright orange where a single eye looked from the hole of the mask, looking onward at the screen before him. Of all of the students there, his eye fell upon one in particular, the boy with green hair. So, the old man's finally found a replacement. He's not half bad, all things considered. But even still, no matter how good he thinks he is, he will never be good enough. Master, what are we going to do? The man would hold up his hand as his servant would fall silent. For now, we're just going to enjoy the festival. And we're going to keep our eyes on that boy in particular. Do tell me, what is his name? His name is Izuku Midoriya, sir. Izuku Midoriya. Intriguing. I look forward to seeing what Mr. Midoriya can do. I hope he'll be entertaining. This concludes What If Deku Was Batman? My Hero Academia: The Dark Knight Returns, Part 5. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue Dragon Ball World's Strongest. What if Wonder Woman was in Dragon Ball Part 5? But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.